Hi everyone, welcome to the day 8 of Selenium training. Today we are going to discuss about arrays. We are going to see what is an array, how to create an array, how to store and retrieve values from an array, and its usage in Selenium. Before moving ahead with today's course, I would recommend you to go to the Smart Classroom playlist for corejava. So you can search for Smart Classroom Java, you can check the logo and click on the video. From this video, you can navigate to the Smart Classroom channel. Okay, here you can click on the playlists. Then we can go to corejava for Selenium playlist. Please go through the video sequentially. We are designing the course from the basics that would help us in writing Selenium scripts. I would request everyone to perform the hands-on along with me in order to master Selenium. So let's learn together about arrays. Now let us create a class and name it as arrays. So let's take a scenario in order to understand the fundamentals of arrays. Let's discuss the steps a user needs to perform for signing into YouTube. Firstly, the user would need to have the Google account, email and password. User needs to have a web browser installed in the system. YouTube URL is required to navigate to the website. Then user needs to click on the sign in button and enter the credentials for login. So now we need 4 variables in order to store the data that is needed for logging into YouTube. First of all, we will create a string variable known as browser name and assign it the value Chrome. Similarly, we can create variables to store the URL, username and password. What if we have 100 test data? Shall we create 100 different variables? It is not a good programming practice as it decreases readability of the code. So when we have huge number of data, we prefer to save them in a single variable known as arrays. In Selenium, it is basically used for data storage. Now we will see how to create an array that will store the above data. Since all the 4 variables are of string type, we are going to create a string array. So square brackets are used in order to represent an array. So we will write string array and mention the variable name for the array. Let's say YouTube data equal to new string. Inside square bracket we need to provide the size of the array. Here we have 4 data, so the size will be 4. Now let's see the memory representation. So YouTube data is going to point to this array. Every memory location is addressed by index. Array index starts from 0. So for the first memory location, the index will be 0, for second it is 1 and so on. So we can assign them values based on index. So since we have 4 data in total, so it will be 0, 1, 2, 3. So in the first index, we are going to store the browser name, that is Chrome. In the second index, we will be storing the YouTube URL. In the third index, we will store the username. And we are going to store the password in the fourth index. Now let us see how to access the array. Let's say we want to print the value of the first memory location, that is index 0. Let's see the syntax. Basically, we need to use a print statement to print this array name with index 0. So using the 0th index, we can print the value of the first array element. If we run the program, we can see Chrome is printed. Similarly, we can get the other data from this array using the index. Total number of elements in array can be found out using array name.length variable. Basically, we can print the length of this YouTube data array using YouTube data.length variable. So if we print this, we should get the output as 4, since there are 4 elements in this array. Instead of printing the array element one by one, we can go for a for loop as well to retrieve all the data from the array. So let's see how using a for loop we can retrieve the data from the array. So for that, since array index starts with 0, we will declare a int variable and initialize it to 0. We need to run this loop 4 times, okay, and the length is returning 4. Since it is starting from 0, we will run this loop until the value of I is 3. This loop is going to start when I is equal to 0 and run until the value of I is 3, and YouTube data.length will return us 4. So we have mentioned here I less than 4. That means the value of I can be maximum 3 in order to get into this loop. Okay, so here we can print all the elements of the array using the array name, and in square brackets we have provided the variable name. So when the loop will run for the first time, the value of I will be 0. It is going to print YouTube data of 0. That means the 0th index of YouTube data. So it will print the first element. When this loop is going to run for the second time, value of I will be 1. So it will print the second element. When the value of I is 2, it will print the third element. When the value of I is 3, it will print the fourth element. And when it is 4, it will perform this condition check 4 less than 4, which is not true, so it will come out of the loop. Let us save the program and run this. We can see all the data that is present in the array has been printed here. So for loop is index based, so we are accessing array elements using the index. Now let's see how to print the array elements using for each loop. For that, first of all, we need to write for. We need to define a variable that will iterate through the array. Since this is string type array, we are going to define a string variable. As you can see, I have defined a string variable. Name of the variable is element. So this element is going to iterate over the array. Okay, here we need to mention the array name, that is YouTube data. Here we need not provide any index. The element is going to iterate through all the data that is present inside this array. So when this loop will run for the first time, element is going to print the first index of YouTube data, and it is going to iterate through all the data present in YouTube data and give us the result. Let us give a demarcator. Now let us save our program and run it. First one is using for loop, second one is using for each loop. Today we discussed about arrays, how to create array, store values in array, retrieve values from array, its usage in Selenium, how to retrieve values using for loop and for each loop. So the advantage of array is that we can represent huge number of values by using a single variable. Also it has a disadvantage. Once we have created an array, there is no chance of increasing or decreasing the size based on our requirement. So array has a fixed size. So in the upcoming video we are going to discuss about 2-dimensional arrays. See you in the next video. Thank you.